Hi there, Jessica Jones here. I'm a registered dietitian here in Student Health and Counseling Services. And today we're going to talk all about how to eat healthy on a budget. So many of the patients that I work with say that they really find it challenging with their limited funds when it comes to finding foods that are healthy, especially when they're not able to shop at some of these specialty stores and they just want really practical advice for stretching the food dollar. So today we're going to talk all about how you can eat healthy on a budget. So let's get started. All right, so here we are, and I am behind the slides now. And like I said, we're going to talk all about cheap eats. I want to start off this presentation just by defining what a healthy plate actually looks like, because sometimes people are a little bit confused or not sure, and I want to share my favorite guideline for how to know if you are eating a healthy plate and how to plan your meals. And that is the MyPlate method. Now, I'm sure you may have heard of the MyPlate method before, but I like this picture because it gives you more of a visual of what the actual portion sizes look like. So the idea with MyPlate is that you want to make one half of your plate vegetables, one fourth protein, and one fourth whole grains. And for protein, you want to choose lean proteins like chicken or turkey, even fish, or even plant-based proteins like tofu and beans. And then for your starchy foods, you want to make sure that that's limited to about one fourth of your plate. And some examples would be brown rice or even quinoa, whole wheat couscous, potatoes, or even pasta. And then on the left side of the plate, you'll notice that half of that is made up of vegetables. And these are non-starchy vegetables, so things like greens or even carrots, beets, broccoli, cauliflower, these are all good examples. Now, the only thing that this plate is sometimes missing are healthy fats. Now, in this case, we have healthy fats from the salmon, but sometimes that's not always the case. So we want to make sure that we're also including things like olive oil, canola oil, avocado, or even nuts and seeds, but we'll get more into that further in the presentation. Now, I want to start by going over the 5-step process for eating healthy on a budget. Now, the first thing that you have to do is make a plan. I always tell my patients that it's almost impossible to eat healthy, especially on the cheap, without a plan. And it's important to plan what you're going to buy, cook, and eat over the course of a week. And a lot of times people say, I don't have time to do this, it's too much. Usually a plan takes probably like 5 to 30 minutes to make. And I like to remind people that there are 168 hours in the week. And doing this meal plan really takes less than one. So we really want to make sure that we're doing this as a way to kind of honor our health and, ensure that we're making decisions that we feel good about throughout the week. Step number 2 is keeping it simple. Patients always come to me feeling defeated because they, decided to do these super complicated recipes they may have seen on Instagram, and they were really complex and they had all these ingredients and they had to go to different stores and they ended up wasting a lot of money. So I always push people to choose recipes that have 10 ingredients or less. Really, even like 5, 6, 7 ingredients is better because it's simple. You can still get a variety of different types of food with 5 to 7 ingredients, but you're not going to spend a lot of money. And along the same lines of simplicity, I really try to push people to not make a new recipe for every single meal every single day, because that is going to set you up for disaster when it comes to trying to stretch the food dollar. So try to rotate between a couple different, staple meals throughout the week. Number 3 is that frozen is your friend. Now, what I mean by that is buying frozen fruits and vegetables. So you can do things like buy berries and microwave them and have them warm with oatmeal. You can also add frozen spinach to a smoothie or even microwave frozen broccoli and add it to your whole wheat pasta. So buy frozen, it's great. And it's great because it saves a lot of time. It's typically already cut, washed, and chopped and ready to go. And of course, with frozen, we definitely save money, which is the goal here, right? Because frozen has a longer shelf life and it's often half the price. And so I know that it's really annoying at the end of the week when you buy all these fresh ingredients and they were expensive and you didn't get around to cooking. At least with frozen, you're not throwing anything away that you don't get to. And many patients ask, well, is frozen as healthy as fresh? And the answer is absolutely, especially with just pure fruits and vegetables because they are frozen at the peak of freshness. So that means they have all of their vitamins, minerals, and nutrition properties intact. Step 4 is sticking to whole foods. We already kind of talked about frozen fruits and vegetables, and I want to touch on our proteins, carbs, and fats, which are the macronutrients. So, sticking to whole foods means that we're buying less processed foods, which means that we're going to eat healthier naturally, and it's also going to be cheaper. So, with proteins, think of things like ground turkey, frozen chicken breast, even cans of tuna, frozen fish fillets, cottage cheese, if you like cottage cheese, yogurt, eggs, and even milk. These are all examples of proteins that are whole foods and that have a lot of nutrition, but typically are a little bit cheaper. On the carb side of things, you want to stick to things like pasta, especially whole wheat pasta, it's going to have more nutrition. Rice, I recommend brown rice. Oats, you can do whole oats, you can do steel cut oats, whatever your preference, they have the same nutritional value. Potatoes are also good. I just recommend that you keep the skin on them because that has a lot of the fiber and some of the vitamins and minerals. Also, beans, which are both carbs and proteins, but I'm going to put them at carbs for the purpose of this presentation, apples, and bananas. And lastly, we have our fats. So, when it comes to cooking oils, I generally like to recommend olive oil and canola oil. So, I usually tell people to use olive oil for low heat cooking because it has a lower smoke point, or like your salads and dressings, things like that. And if you're actually going to cook something or use a little bit of a higher temperature, canola oil will do the trick. Other sources of good fats are flax seeds, also mixed nuts, and for those who can't afford to eat fish 2 to 3 times per week, you might want to take a fish oil supplement. For a lot of my patients, it's just going to be cheaper and you're going to get those omega-3 fatty acids. And of course, it's always best to have the whole food, but we also have to be realistic and work within our budget. Step number 5 is to batch prep. Now, batch prepping is something I live by because it really helps to ensure that you use all the food that you buy and that you don't eat out frequently during the week because you have cooked all of your food in a batch session over the weekend. So, what I recommend is spend a couple of hours on a free day and really cook a couple of different dishes that you love and rotate those throughout the week. And remember that staples are your friend and also cheap. So, think of things like grains, beans, and even vegetables. In this slide, I wanted to just share some of my favorite ingredients that are healthy and also cheap. So we talked about some of these already, but a lot of these you'll find at your local grocery store and they really go a long way. So cabbage is definitely one. Carrots are excellent. Beans, again, great source of protein. We mentioned eggs already, but you could do things like an egg frittata that'll really stretch the food dollar. Brown rice is healthy and can be incorporated into many dishes. Oatmeal is one of my favorite cheap, healthy, and nutritious foods to recommend. And of course, root vegetables like potatoes and sweet potato. And of course, your frozen fruits and vegetables like frozen blueberries. One thing that's really important to do when you're coming up with your batch prep and you're doing your meal plan is to think about ways that you can recycle, reduce, and reuse ingredients. So, for example, here I used a beet and turned it into a bunch of different recipes. So, you can add a beet into a beet burger, you can add it into a beet hummus, you can do pizza instead of doing a tomato sauce, you can do a beet sauce, and even into a smoothie. So it's a really great way to add variety by stretching the food dollar and also pairing that beet-based dish with other foods so you are getting a balance of nutrition within your meals. A lot of my patients don't have a kitchen and they might be living in the dorms with other students and they need some tips for how can they eat healthy on the cheap without having a full kitchen. So here is what I recommend. So definitely have a small blender that's perfect for making smoothies in the morning. I'm a big fan of the Instapot or really any kind of pressure cooker because you can make dried beans from scratch in under 30 minutes or even brown rice and that can really stretch the food dollar. A microwave is another essential tool because you can cook a ton of different things in there, especially cheap ingredients that we already mentioned, like eggs and potatoes. And then, of course, a mini fridge. We want to make sure that we're keeping our food fresh so that it'll stay good for longer. Now, I just wanted to go over 10 tips that I recommend that you consider when it comes to eating healthy on the cheap. So, number one, don't buy anything you don't have a plan for. This is a trap. It's the easiest way to buy a bunch of food, get home, have wasted money because you can't make a meal out of anything. Number two is to become a coupon person. And you can do this by finding coupons online or even going to your local grocery store and looking through some of their weekly sales. Number three is to learn how to store foods the right way because that is going to make them last longer and stretch the food dollar. So, delicate foods like berries or even peppers should definitely go in the fridge to help them stay longer. And you want to make sure not to have bananas next to a lot of other produce because they give off a gas that tends to make them ripen more quickly. So, I usually store my bananas in, a corner away from everything else. And when it comes to your greens like kale, collards, chard, even your herbs, it's always a good idea to chop off the stems when you get home or part of the stem and then add it to a cup of water because that's going to make it last a whole lot longer. And this is also a good trick for once those greens have wilted and you still want to use them, but you want to perk them up a bit. Chop off the stems, add them into water, and they will be back to life in about 4 hours, as long as you put them in the fridge. Now, another tip is choosing oatmeal for breakfast more often. I mentioned this already throughout the presentation. If you don't have any time in the morning to make oatmeal, you can also do overnight oats. And of course, my next tip is to arrive to the farmer's market fashionably late because a lot of times farmers are just, willing to get rid of stuff for a cheaper price. Now, my next five tips are first to try and grow your own veggies if you're able to, or start an herb garden. I know sometimes it's tough, especially living in the city. There's not a lot of space, but if you even have a windowsill, you can definitely grow some herbs that way. Now, if you don't already, my next tip is to get a membership at club stores like Costco or even Thrive Market online because you can get a lot of, these healthier foods in bulk and stretch your food dollar that way. Now, the seventh tip is to make an end of the week soup with foods that are about to spoil. It's a great way to not have to throw anything away and then have like a hearty soup or stew to enjoy throughout the rest of the week. Tip number 9 is to consider joining a farm share or CSA. And a farm share is basically where farmers get together and decide that they want to partner with the community and grow a bunch of different crops. And then, as community members, you pay a fee. Maybe it's $10, $20, $30 per week or per month to get a delivery of whatever the farm produces. So usually farm shares have fresh fruits and vegetables, and a lot of them even have dairy or eggs and also meat. So join a farm share. If you need a website to find a farm share near you, you can always go to the website localharvest.org. And last but not least, my final tip is to stick to the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. So, the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 is a list from the Environmental Working Group that comes out on an annual basis. And they do tests and they measure the amount of pesticides found in different foods. So, they found that the Dirty Dozen are foods that have the most pesticides and that you might want to consider buying organic. And those are things like apples, celery, tomatoes, cucumbers. I like to think of Dirty Dozen as foods that have just kind of a more delicate skin. And the Clean 15, on the other hand, are foods that have the least amount of pesticides and are fine to be eaten conventionally grown, meaning you can save a lot of money by not buying these organic. So things like onions, avocado, corn, pineapple, mango, sweet peas, eggplant, all of these things are on the Clean 15 list. And if you want more information on this, just Google EWG and look for the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list. And I just want to say also that if you're not able to afford to buy any foods organic or any fruits and vegetables organic, that's okay. It is much more harmful to avoid eating fruits and vegetables because they're not organic than to eat conventionally grown fruits and vegetables. So just some food for thought. Now that concludes our presentation on cheap eats or eating healthy on a budget. If you need more information or just want to ask me a question, feel free to email me at jessica.jones@ucsf.edu. And there are a ton of additional resources on the Student Health website. That's studenthealth.ucsf.edu/nutrition. And as always, if you feel like you would benefit from a one-on-one nutrition appointment with me, go ahead and schedule an appointment online using the student portal. And that way we can have a one-on-one and really work on your individual nutrition needs. All right, thanks so much for listening, and I will catch you next time. Bye.